This film is like an act of falling in love.
It's just because you love doing it and you feel it's important.
BBC के आने से जो distribution का impact आया है, that I could not imagine.
There is no baggage of making profits on big studios. Then why should the onus of it being a profit-making film be on individual one independent filmmaker?
We've figured a way to get in touch with his wife, got in touch with the human rights activist in the film, and she sent a cryptic message to Panahi in prison, and that's how he came to know. And then we just feel like he'd be chuckling in prison, thinking that, oh, they have imprisoned me, but a film of mine is out there.
Welcome to the documentary nominees roundtable of the Critics' Choice Awards 2025, which is organized by the Film Critics Guild of India and Group M Motion Entertainment. While this will actually be the 7th edition of the awards, it will be the first time that the Film Critics Guild has introduced a documentary category. And I, for one, am really glad that we finally have one. About time that we recognize some of the most incredible filmmaking that's happening in India in this scene. And today we are joined by the directors of 4 of them for this very special roundtable. We have Sarvnik Kaur, the director of Against the Tide. We have Anupama Srinivasan, who has co-directed Nocturnes with Anirban Datta. Amitabh Parashar, who has also co-directed The Midwife's Confession along with Syed Ahmed Safi. We have Sreemoyee Singh, who's directed And Towards Happy Alleys. The 5th nomination is Amit Datta. He unfortunately couldn't join us. He's directed the documentary Rhythm of Islah. So thank you so much to all 4 of you for taking the time out to discuss about your work, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about the scene as well. So I personally feel, and this is a question open to all of you, that a documentary filmmaker is perhaps an independent filmmaker in the truest and purest sense. Like, you don't have studios backing you, you really pretty much have to go out there, escape, and make these films. Briefly, can you tell us a little bit about your journeys as documentary filmmakers? What drew you to this format, to this medium? Yeah.
Wow, what a non-complex question to start with. Easy one. For me, Suhani, I started the film in my head, or at least started thinking about it while I was still doing Source, which was my first film in Kashmir. The story that I'd read in the newspaper was the coastal roads coming up in Bombay, and it's going to displace the coolies from their ancestral villages. I think one of the biggest privileges of being a documentary filmmaker is the constant need for kind of self-reflection and find your own motivation, which is something that is not just at the beginning of the film, but lasts you through the edit process as well. You can kind of constantly go back to what was the motivation to begin with when you started your film. So I was kind of lucky that the idea of displacement, I could see the overlaps with my own family's personal history of coming from Pakistan as refugees in India, and then the anti-Sikh riots that had happened. Making a film in Kashmir, which was about music of resistance and young hip hoppers and blues artists who were recording their lived memories into their art forms.
Yeah.
And then here in Kashmir, in Bombay, a city where I'd kind of found my home, because my family came from Pakistan. Delhi was our home. We never really had a village. So Bombay had become my village. And so there were this running thread of displacements. And I just thought that, when history's displacement at that time was political, in Kashmir, it's nationalism, and in Bombay, it's called development. The isms keep changing, but the cost that individuals pay for the times that they're in, those stories are never written anywhere. History does not encompass these personal memories, these personal experiences of living history in that moment. And that's, I suppose, how my curiosity first began. And rest, I think it was a very, very long, drawn-out process, where I think it started from a misunderstanding of my own self, why I wanted to do it, and wanting to tell the story of this displacement through the lens of land rights and how land belongs to people, and soon recognizing that we live in very, very xenophobic times where there is so much fear of the other and the hatred for the other. And so when you make a hypothesis which says that land belongs to people in a city like Bombay, which has been reclaimed from the sea, 7 islands, where outsiders have essentially called it home over the last 200 years and made it what it is today, then how do you make a watertight case about it? And I think spending about 3 odd years on ground really helped me figure out that I was going to tell a story of love and friendship rather than this political strife over land. And that was really both the creative and personal journey for me. And I think as a documentary filmmaker, what I find the most pleasurable is I feel like it's the art of living life. And that's why we have to keep it independent. I don't think that there is any other profession that teaches you so repeatedly every time to step out of your way if you want to learn. Often we stand in the way of our own learning. So it's like wanting to exert least amount of pressure and control and letting things flow. So it's actually creating a conducive environment for creation to flow by itself. And I think that for me was my own 6 years worth of learning, really.
Yeah. Anupama, I'll come to you. Maybe you can tell us, because you and Anirban together have done a series of documentaries. I watched another one as well. So you want to tell me what is the process for both of you? Is documentary something that gives you the most pleasure? Is this what you want to keep doing? Or have you ever thought of making a feature together as well? I'm curious, yeah.
I actually went to FTI, which is predominantly a fiction-dominated course.
Yeah.
But before that, in college, I had done nonfiction filmmaking. And right after FTI, I came back to documentaries. I think mostly because of the creative freedom, because I didn't want to spend years and years assisting. And so it was like, I got to make my own film within like some 6 months after graduation from FTI. And then I was a director and I could do what I wanted. So for me, that's been sort of the most important and crucial part of any creative endeavor is like, do you have the creative control of what you're doing? So for many years, I've been making documentaries, curating, teaching, and all of that. And in 2015, Anirban, who was also making documentaries independently, so he and I started working together. And he had this long experience of working in the Northeast. So he'd been doing a lot of workshops and films especially in Manipur and Nagaland. And so our first film together was Flickering Lights, which you probably saw, which was set in the Naga hills of Manipur. And that took us 7.5 years to make.
Wow.
So like Sarvnik was saying, it's like unless you are really committed to giving that kind of your life to a film, you may not get into it because you're not going to be compensated in any monetary way or even fame or anything. It's just because you love doing it and you feel it's important. I mean, if that doesn't work for you, don't even bother. Especially with feature docs. So that took so long in the making because of funding issues and so on that meanwhile we started making Nocturnes, 5 years, and that seemed to go by very fast compared to 7.5. We were like, oh, ye to 5 saal mein ho gaya. So we are like, we've become super fast now. So it's been very interesting for me to step away from having all the control in a way as a director to sharing that with another person, with a collaborator. So with Anirban and me, but the good thing is that we have a very sort of shared cinematic vision. So we don't have conflicts at that level. It's like, like small things like, how to seed space at the right time. But I think because our overall vision for why we make films is very clear. And that is that what is it that you can convey through a film that can't be done through any other medium? So that cinematic aspect has to be there for us. So if you can make more of an impact by writing an essay or an article or a pamphlet or a speech, please do that. So if you are choosing cinema, then you have to give it that respect because we as like cinephiles, we love cinema. So all our work sort of comes from that, and then it sort of merges with our preoccupation at that point. And with Nocturnes, it was more like stuck in these Zoom rooms with air purifier, which is there behind me also, and living in Delhi in this very claustrophobic environment where we are just stuck to our devices and we have totally lost connection with nature. So Nocturnes was sort of our attempt at reconnecting with nature in a non-typical nature film way. So I'll talk more later, but
Yeah. Amitabh ji, maybe you can tell us a little bit about it's such a hard-hitting documentary. You want to tell me how what was the process of like getting all these women to come on board and share these very traumatic experiences, and realities of their life. I mean, would that process of building that trust and telling them that this is a safe space, you need to talk about this. Tell us a little bit about that, sir.
As you know, that I have a journalistic background, and
Yes, sir.
I don't have any, film background. I hadn't learned anything in any film school. Actually, the process of thinking of making a documentary started with this particular film, The Midwife's Confession, and that too happened with a single column story published in a local newspaper there. I was in Bihar at the time. That news item was regarding a father who had killed her newborn baby because he thought that she would, create problems, especially financial problems after, 18 years when they would get her married. So he killed her, and later he was jailed. And I was, curious about meeting that mother. So that is the reason I went to that town, which was near to Pune, where I was there at the time. And I went there to meet that lady, but she was in a very bad condition. She couldn't talk. But I came to know about a couple who used to run an NGO at the time. And they came in contact with me, and they told me that if you are interested in this kind of stories, let me tell you something very, very urgent and very important and shocking also. So next day I went to meet there, and they, talked about these midwives, these women who used to kill baby girls after birth, obviously out of some compulsions. And they are in contact with these women. And when I met them, they were in the process of, a kind of reformation at that particular time. I don't know why, but I thought that this is something we should. I was in a position, I was part of Screen Weekly at the time, the part of Indian Express Group. So I had this option of, writing that exclusive story, reaching out to these women. But I don't know why I thought that I should film it. And since I had no idea about what is camera and how to shoot, etc. But after 6 months, I was there with that beta cam and sound assistant and one camera person to shoot those women. But yeah, getting the trust didn't happen at the time. Actually, trust happened much later. To get their confession for the first time on camera, and that too of at least 5 midwives. They openly talked about how they used to kill, how much they kill, etc. That was obviously a difficult process. But that journey, as you asked, that the process of making a documentary, that started with that incident.
Yeah. I'm going to come to Sreemoyee. Sreemoyee, I think you can tell us a little bit about. It's actually a thesis that you were working on, correct me if I'm wrong, on Iranian cinema. And then you sort of go there, you start speaking the subjects and you realize, hey, I can make a documentary out of this. Can you tell me, thesis is the starting point and then it sort of becomes something bigger?
Actually, it wasn't the thesis first.
Okay.
I think, I think it's people think of it this way, and I'm very happy if people think of it in this way, because I feel like the thesis and the film, I mean, it was a two-pronged approach I took to tackle Iran and totally understand it from an insider's perspective. So I felt that to make a film, I'd need to maybe learn Persian, go to Iran, to be able to speak to people over there. And I needed to be grounded in academia, needed to be grounded in research. I couldn't just be someone who just goes to Iran, lands up there.
Yeah.
So for me, the approach that I took to make this documentary was grounded in research and academia. I decided that why not also write a thesis, because, it's going to be very heavy on research as well. The film isn't, but what the film doesn't have, the thesis has, and vice versa, I think more importantly for me, it is the love and the curiosity for Iran that was born when I first watched Iranian films when I was way back when I was doing my masters from university, Jadavpur University in Calcutta. I mean, I was very inspired to see how filmmakers, artists figure ways to find inspiration to tell their stories when they're living in a place which is constantly censoring them. There's constant vigilance, you're constantly being watched. And despite living in a place like that, how do you figure a language to express?
Communicate,
Express yourself. Sitting in India, I felt that these are things we are also tackling with,
Yeah.
And I felt that I need to go and talk to them. I need to go and meet these filmmakers and talk to the ladies and talk to the artists and poets and get some inspiration on how we can do the same.
Yeah.
I feel this curiosity and love. I have to say love because I feel
Yeah.
like this film is like an act of falling in love. I mean, a lot of people ask me why you've done it. And when you're driven to find out something, you often don't have a reason, like a larger reason. But for me, the larger reason was to be inspired, I guess. So this came before the desire to learn Persian because the film is also about a feminist poet who wrote
Yes.
in Iran, Furugh, and I read her poetry and I felt like she was talking directly to me, despite not being Iranian. I'm living in India and I don't understand Persian, but I feel like she's talking to me directly. And I felt that I need to learn Persian and I need to understand, how she could express what she did in Iran when it was not allowed to, still isn't. The next thing I know, I now talking about saving money and just diving into things. I started doing a PhD project, and then I started saving my stipend, which was very at that point. Over the next year, I saved some money and I went to Iran with a very basic camera and a very basic sound recorder, and I decided that I'm here, so the film has to be made and the thesis has to be written. So both of it happened together.
But when you went, you didn't tell them that you're going there to make a documentary, right? When you were going to Iran, because there is a certain surreptitiousness, there's a certain amount of secrecy with which a lot of this stuff is happening. So I'm wondering, how did you negotiate that?
The characters, the people, protagonists that you see in the film, they all knew, the main protagonists.
Right.
But when I was...
No, I'm talking about going into Iran. When you were saying that I'm going to Iran, what did you tell them? That you're going there to research on a thesis or to make a documentary?
To learn Persian. I learned Persian from Tehran University. So I was doing it, yeah.
So you were doing this by the side. So you were learning Persian, you were shooting a documentary, and you were working on your thesis. Three-way process. Okay. I'll come to this for all of you. I feel like, I mean, maybe you can add to this, that the documentary scene in India is sort of on the cusp of something in the last 5-7 years. You've seen Indian documentaries going to international film festivals. Anupama's and Anirban's film was at Sundance last year, Nocturnes. We've had 2 documentaries nominated for the Oscars. We have had one short win an Oscar. So I wanted to ask all of you, how do you see the scene? It is a scene which is not as exposed as the other mediums. So how do you see the documentary scene right now in India in terms of both funding, in terms of distribution, and in just being able to tell the stories that you want to tell?
I mean, I would just think setting up systems that can be duplicated would be the death of documentaries as we know it. We set up studio systems for Bollywood. We've tried organizing things from the top. I think there is a certain lack of vision when we talk about documentaries in India. I would like to quote an example of Uber when it came to India. It came with the idea of not making profits immediately. They came with the idea of setting up an industry and appropriating an entire system. They gave 50% discounts. They came with deep pockets and investments, and their vision was 10 years away. And in the meantime, the Kali Pili taxis were dismantled. Drivers thought they'd got great jobs. Right now, we pay double, triple surge charges. The drivers are complaining because 40-50% of their earnings taken by Uber and Olas. I think there's a general level of lack of vision of what this industry can mean. Right now, the question of 5 films going to Sundance in the last 5 years or so many films getting Oscar nominated is on the shoulders of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
There is no particular system in place which says, oh, here's funding or here's how you can make your life simpler or easier. And that's because there's a lack of vision. There is a preconceived notion that, I don't know, whatever they think of documentaries, sanctimonious boredom or too anti-establishment, or I don't know what it is. So I think a culture of documentary viewing and appreciation needs to be inculcated from a very young level. We are products of post-liberalization India. We are products of people who've seen ambition become the predominant sentiment that kind of drives the whole subcontinent forward. We've seen value systems change. We've gone from analog to digital. We are that generation. So we are emotionally reacting to that. Most of us who can afford to are reacting to that, and our stories are telling stories of that shift that we are kind of seeing. And for this to translate into something meaningful in the long term, I think a vision of that kind where it is set in motion from the very young level, where film viewing and film clubs are part of school curriculum, where people appreciate nuanced films. Because if we are to look at how it is today, it's basically we will go on for as long as we have the strength to. The filmmakers, my peers right now, we've been extremely lucky. We make our films driven by some personal need, and then it's in competition, and then it must win. Because if it doesn't, then you do not amount to anything, because then distribution's not accessed. So there's a lot of pressure. Like Anupama was saying, we don't even get salaries. We don't even get labor for our time. Our value or our product's value at the time of sale is what is the value of the time that we've spent making our films. And I find that value system to participate in, I do not know what addition I can bring, because one individual with one want, one story which is moving me forward. We're very lucky that we found each other to be sitting here with Anupama, Sreemoyee, and know these stories. I think the sense of community that we've got going now is the biggest take home from here, because in terms of the vision shifting suddenly from immediately profit making, like they ask that your idea should be profitable. And I think that same benchmark is not put on a Singham 5, which is AI generated something and with 500 big star casts. There is no baggage of making profits on big studios. Then why should the onus of it being a profit-making film be on individual one independent filmmaker? So either the mind shifts, or we keep doing what we're doing until we have the energy to do it. And then, like Sreemoyee was saying, save money, be smart about it, invest in market. We're not filmmakers. Like now, after the first, second film, you're like, that was madness what I pulled off. If that hadn't worked, I would have gone down. And that is scary to have that kind of virginity or innocence back then. I don't have that innocence now. I know the pitfalls, I know the dangers, and it makes me feel like, am I going ahead like a gambler? The nervousness that comes with it, which then ultimately, because you have to participate in a system which has to create monetary value, that's just something we can beat around the bush and talk about, like, what is the future of Indian documentary? I think individuals are the future of Indian documentary, because systemically, I don't really see some major shift or appreciation coming our way, and also there are dangers to turning our ways of filmmaking into any kind of model to follow, because each one of us is coming with our own, like Amitabh sir said, winning trust, making a conducive environment. When you're not getting paid, then can the industry not have extractive processes? It's not possible. So, if we've got to keep it clean, and if we've got to keep it either us individuals, the onus is on the shoulders of us individuals. That's all and feels dark. And it is also the hope, like in Iran, beyond despite all their limitations, they find a way.
Sarvnik and Sreemoyee's documentaries are available to see on Mubi. I'm just wondering, has distribution, is that something that both you and Anirban talk about? Like, how does our work get seen? Even Amitabh Sir's documentary is on YouTube. BBC News has tied up and made sure that documentary gets seen. So I'm wondering, is that something that you discuss with Anirban, like apart from the festival circuit that you do, how do we get these movies across to the larger audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to dial back before that about your previous question, actually, Indian filmmakers have been making documentaries for many, many years. It's just that things had a different way of functioning back then, whether it's the 80s or 90s, and before digital technology came in. People were still making films, and very good films. It was because of the technology, it was restricted to only people who could manage lives, who had some financial backing from families and so on. It was very difficult if you had to earn your money through this. And that still continues, with whether international funding has come in, but we are all having to do multiple things to survive. But the overall shift, I think, in the last few years, why are we even talking about this, is because the only thing that people in most countries understand is Oscar. So the minute two films in the last 4 years got Oscar nominated, two feature documentaries, then everybody's like, oh, Indian documentaries are doing well. But Indian filmmakers have been making very good documentaries and for forever, I think just to say that how much weightage are we giving to certain things. And now the new thing has been Sundance, and Sarvnik's film was at Sundance, Sushmit's was there. So every year there's been a film from India last 4 years. And then that has become the new sort of this thing. Sreemoyee was in Berlin. So it's like, which big festival are you making? So I mean, but the good thing is that I think DocEdge has had a very important role. We all pitched. I mean, 3 of us here have pitched there. And that gave us, I think, a little bit of courage to dream bigger, because there was kind of thing ki aap documentary bana rahe ho to stay within your limits. Like, don't get paid at all. Put in your own money. Make something which will finish, like you can make in 1 year and just wrap it up, So to imagine a film that can take 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years, jo bhi hai, even if you're not getting paid much, it does require resources. So to imagine that we can dream like a filmmaker from anywhere in the world of other kind of films. So I think that's been a big change. And I must give credit to Sundance, actually, because the 4 films that have got in, they are all totally different. So this idea that if a film is coming from South Asia, it has to be a certain, social issue film, which is sort of talking about third world problems, that is not there anymore, which is, I think, our greatest victory as individuals for sure, but even that kind of validation coming from the so-called West. So I think that's really important. Look at Sreemoyee's film. I mean, she shot the film in Iran. I mean, that's what I'm saying. To have that imagination to dream. And not to say that, oh, we live in South Asia, so we are supposed to, so I'm a woman, so I have to make a film about women's issues. So I mean, to think that, no, I can make a film about moths in Arunachal Pradesh, and I have a right to do that. And I have a right to make an artistic film, which, which everybody's like, actually, how did you guys do this? And filmmakers in America are saying that this doesn't follow anything of the structure that we are taught of plot point and characters and drama. And so, but they were like, but it still works. So to have that courage to push the limits at an international level, I think, and to present our films. So that's been a great victory, apart from all the other issues which Sarvnik talked about. And,
I completely agree. Yeah, the education of the ecosystem was so hard to come by. It's such a niche ecosystem, and you don't even know where to start research from. And DocEdge definitely has played a very, very big role in the last 10 years. I think a decade of contribution and bringing out one story after another, year after year. They've done incredible work for the industry as such.
But distribution, on the other hand, is a major challenge. Of course, we want our film to be seen. So our film was released in the US in 15 cities in October, November, December. It was released in the UK, but because our film is a big screen film and we want it to be released in India. And we are talking to distributors, but to make that leap of showing a documentary in a theater where people will come and buy tickets and see it, that's really something that theater people, they have to take that little bit of risk, because most Bollywood films are going empty. It's not like they are making any money. So I don't understand this sort of just because it hasn't worked before, or just because they haven't tried it actually. They haven't tried it. So they don't want to change anything. They just hope that by having a big star, somehow they'll get the crowds in. So that's kind of a limitation. And I think that with this push, whatever we need, whether it's Oscar or Sundance or Berlin, whatever, if we can use all these names to get over that line and have a way in which we can release documentaries in theaters here, at least in a very limited way, that would be a huge achievement. I think, and I think we should keep pushing, and we are definitely pushing.
Also, yeah, this is great. I mean, whatever you both covered, but also we've done so many festivals across the world and even in India. And one thing, there's been great support from India, like in terms of festivals, community screenings. People have just reached out to us and said that we want to screen your films, and that's great. But having said that, when we're talking about distribution, even some festivals, like big festivals, do not take care in programming documentaries in a similar infrastructural manner with which they program, let's say, a fiction film. Like a fiction film is given like a huge perfect kind of an auditorium, and sometimes it goes really like half full. Whereas, let's say, I'll talk with my film's example. I mean, I was in a festival in a festival, I was given a much smaller screening space, but there were like more than 650 people in the line, and they were so disappointed that they couldn't get in. And there was nothing to be done. There couldn't have been another screening, but this keeps happening in India. So I feel like coming back to what Sarvnik said, from a grassroots level, like, we need this education to be given out that documentaries are not the same documentaries that you've with a voice of God, that you've it's not informative documentaries anymore. It's really come a long way. So please, space for these films, because there are people who really turn up to festivals. They wait in queue. Sometimes they pay money to watch the films also. Why are you not opening up your infrastructure, giving us bigger spaces to screen films? So maybe that is something that could be thought through also.
Also, if you somehow manage to find a distribution on a digital platform, it's also basically you're going there to die a small little death somewhere in a corner, never to be found. It's like a lost alley, and it's a battle that doesn't end. So I keep telling myself, just don't get bitter about it, because then they win. Just find every avenue there is, and then it circles right back to your own motivation. How much can you do? How much time can you spare to keep working on distribution of your last one while you're starting your next one? So it is a hard one.
I'm going to bring Amitabh sir in it. So you chanced on this and you decided you wanted to tell this through video. I'm wondering, do you have another story in the works that you want to say through the video format, through a documentary format?
See, regarding my two, I'm talking about my two of my films. One was The Eyes of Darkness, and that again was fully funded by me, my own resources. That got national award, and also that was in the competition at MIF, Mumbai International Film Festival. But uske baad us film ka kuch nahi hua. I had never sent it to any festivals. I had no idea much. I don't have much idea about the festival circuits as of now also. That film was luckily picked up by IDPA, and DD, Doordarshan, telecasted in 2 parts. So I not fully, but I recovered about, I would say, 50% of that cost. Again, with this film, The Midwife's Confession, which I started in 1995-96. And this is almost a 28 years journey to finish this. Before BBC came on board, it was fully funded by me, my own resources, my salaries as a journalist. It was completely funded by me, more than 100 hours of shoot I did.
Wow.
Before BBC came in. So many shoots, so many stories. But the point I'm trying to say is that when BBC came in, despite the fact that they funded the rest of the film, and obviously I could not recover my cost of all these years. As Sarvnik rightly said, that we don't, हमें लगता है कि हमने इतने घंटे दिए तो उसके वो ऐसे गए, मतलब उसकी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है, तो वो हमारे साथ, मेरे साथ भी ऐसे ही हुआ. बट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, क्योंकि बीबीसी के आने से जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का इम्पैक्ट आया है, that I could not imagine. It's a huge impact. The first film was telecast on BBC's main news channel. Then they released it on BBC YouTube, English, Hindi. Hindi has recently crossed 1 million. English is also reaching out. The most interesting thing is about this distribution thing we are talking about. Is reaching out to common people, and the kind of responses, reactions I'm getting on YouTube, very, very personal. Very personal. That, oh, this has happened my family, and I know this issue. I emotional. They are crying. They almost 80% of the comments are saying that we cried while watching it, and this happened in my family. This happened with me. So what I'm trying to say is that for me, it's very important that people watch my film, and I don't know how, but festivals are okay. I'm for my third film. I'm trying to, for the first time, I'm trying to fill applications for grant, etc. And for the first time, maybe. But again, the question of distribution will come up. And in this scenario, if a broadcaster like BBC comes on board, it helps a lot. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
and for a documentary to popularize in India, that's the biggest issue I've been hearing for years. The first thing is very important, that people should watch documentaries. People should like it. And I'm not talking about the selected group of people, who understand cinema, who appreciate art, who appreciate culture. I'm also talking about the common man who just connects with emotions. That particular film, the Midwife film, has done that. It connected with the common people. That is the point I'm trying to raise.
I'm going to wind up. We've had a lovely discussion. One question I want to ask all of you is that, especially when some of the documentaries that I have watched that have really stayed with me, I always have wondered, have the creators stayed in touch with the subjects? Do they maintain a certain kind of contact? Because, you've spent so many years in getting these stories and getting those experiences out. Are you able to cut the umbilical cord or detach yourself? How does it happen?
4 days ago, all the planets were in an arc in the sky. It is supposedly a phenomenon that happens in 396 billion years. I got a call from Rakesh that this is happening. We made food. We went to an island. I took some of my friends and we did a picnic. And little one who's named after me, Maggie, Rakesh was called to the school because she's been bullying everyone and not really taking classes and not paying attention. So I'm involved sometimes it's like, oh my God, I cannot possibly come for chai and nashta every day because they also live 5 minutes away from my house. So it's a constant negotiation of now I'm coming, but like with my next film, I've got my characters introduced to my old film's characters. I think it's a nice camaraderie to have. Yeah.
Sreemoyee, what about you? Is Mr. Panahi on your speed dial? Like, hey.
No, I don't think I should put him on my speed dial. But no, I'm in touch. I'm in touch with mostly everyone. And I'd say that because I like the rest of all you, I mean, I've spent 7 years to make the film, and these, our films are born out of lived experiences, building relationships and friendships, and I found a family there, and all the people that you see in the film, they are like my family. They protected me. That's why this whole Iran experience and the film has turned out to be the way it is. I think it kind of reflects our relationship.
Absolutely.
And the intimacy and everything. I stopped shooting in 2019. Till about 2023, there was no way to go back to Iran because, things have escalated there quite a lot, typically. So we were really sad that, like my, the composer is my best friend, and like, the guy who plays the sitar in Furuk's grave, and Majdi Genus, who actually reads Furuk's poetry, like, the lady who reads poetry of Furuk, and Aida, the child actor, and her sister Meena. we were very much in touch, but we couldn't meet each other. So after 5 years, when Berlinale announced its results, Majdi flew to Berlin and met after 5 years. I met Genus because she lives in Germany now. So I met her after 7 years. And it's just, and wherever the film's been going, I've been telling people associated with the film, and everyone's coming up. And, it just feels, when your film is done, it feels
Yeah.
like, it just brings everyone together. And so many people have reached out. It's just like, when Berlin picked up the film, Panahi was in prison. It was very serious then, the atmosphere. And then we figured a way to get news to him. So, we figured a way to get in touch with his wife, got in touch with the human rights activist in the film, and she sent a cryptic message to Panahi in prison, and that's how he came to know. And then we just feel like he'd be chuckling in prison, thinking that, oh, they have imprisoned me, but a film of mine is out there.
Out
So,
there.
it's just how,
Yeah.
you find a way to be connected.
What about you, Anupama? Have you left her to study the moths? Is she busy in some mountain, untraceable?
Mansi is teaching in Azim Premji now, but she has she's setting up so Ramana, her mentor, has handed over the lab in Arunachal to her. So she's training the guys who are there in the film.
Yeah.
And now they are doing a lot of the analysis right there near the forest. So there's been a lot, and we are in regular touch with them, even though our film is not in a typical way a character driven film. Human characters are important, their work is important, but the film is actually something else. But I think that, and that's the fun part of documentaries also, is that everybody who's part of the journey, you form your own relationship. And Anirma and I are very particular about keeping expectations, managing expectations, because in some cases, not for Nocturnes so much, but in Flickering Lights, because we were working with a community which hadn't been filmed, that village which hadn't been filmed before. It was like, why are these people from mainland India coming and filming? What is in it? Are they making money? Are we going to get help? So how do you manage those expectations? And make friendships which are not because you want to make a film.
It's not transactional.
And the friendships can be with people who are not even in the film. So I think not to form a relationship only because you want a great character in your film. That is something that we are very conscious, and we are uncomfortable with making films like that, in which is just riding on a character. And if we are coming in as filmmakers, we have to bring something to the table. It can't be because your characters are awesome, because they continue to be awesome in the real world. And I totally don't agree that our job is just to show that or record the quirkiness or the greatness of that character and give to the audience. I think as a filmmaker, your job has to be much more. I think you have to do something else. So in that way, relationship with our human characters and natural characters is a little bit different from many other documentaries, I would say. In Flickering Lights, it was more with the community, and we had an amazing screening actually in Delhi, in which there were 20 people who live from that village, who live in Delhi, and they all came for the screening. And the greatest compliment we got was that it didn't seem like the film had been made by an outsider. They were like, हमारे गांव में तो ऐसे, like हम भी ऐसे ही देखते हैं गांव को. So I'm like, इससे ज़्यादा कोई बड़ी बात नहीं हो सकती. So I think that for me, that authenticity of your own expression is, I think it gets through regardless of whether people from there are saying or people from somewhere else.
True. Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And I must say, I'm really looking forward to having you all be a part of the Critics' Choice Award. I mean, I, for one, will be cheering for this category the loudest. And I'm just so glad we are able, through this category, able to get the guild members and the audience at large to watch these films. So I want to end this roundtable by saying that you actually can watch 3 of these documentaries. Midwife's Confession is on YouTube. Sarvnik and Sreemoyee's film, which is Against the Tide and Towards Happy Alleys, is on Mubi. Please do watch these lovely films. And Anupama is trying the hardest to get Nocturnes into cinema, and we wish her the best for that, and we'll be rooting for that. And hopefully Amit's film Rhythm of a Flower, which is again a lovely, gorgeous animated documentary inspired by Kumar Gandhar's life and his music. Hopefully that also gets on some streaming platform or a theatrical run soon. So thank you so much, everyone. Please keep doing this incredible work that you're doing. And hopefully, given the timelines, all of you work with your documentaries. I don't know if you will be there next year in the same category, but because that's how much time it takes, right? But I do hope we see all of you with more lovelier films very much soon.